The Justice Department has subpoenaed Boeing amid investigations into the certification of its 737 MAX planes. The company must now retain documents, records, and data related to the two passenger jet crashes that killed more than 300 people. At the time of both accidents, the company was selling a feature that might have prevented the crashes, but neither jet had it. CBS News transportation correspondent Kris Van Cleave has the latest.
More than a week into the grounding of the 737 MAX, the focus is increasingly on Boeing. Sources tell CBS News the fraud unit at the Department of Justice subpoenaed documents, records, and data relating to the 737 MAX approval process. David Gomez is a retired FBI executive with experience in crash investigations.
These kind of cases hinge on what did Boeing know and when did they know it and who did they tell about it or not tell about it.
A safety assessment Boeing gave the FAA is likely to be a target of investigators. The Seattle Times reported the assessment appeared to downplay the operation of the anti-stall system believed to have repeatedly pushed the nose down on a Lion Air 737 MAX that crashed in October.
If there is any kind of documentation that indicates that they knew there was a problem and either didn't resolve it to the satisfaction of the FAA or didn't reveal that, that could put them in jeopardy in terms of a possible criminal violation.
Boeing has been making test flights to evaluate the software updates they plan to install to fix the MAX. And the company will no longer charge airlines for a warning light that would alert pilots to a sensor malfunction like the one believed to have set off the Lion Air accident. Previously, it was a pricey add-on feature. But it appears those Ethiopian and Lion Air pilots didn't have the warning because their airlines would have had to pay for it on a plane that has a list price of about $120 million.
And Kris Van Cleave joins me now. So, Kris, we know the Justice Department's fraud unit issued Boeing the subpoena. What more do we know about what investigators are looking for?
Well, we think investigators are trying to get a sense for what did Boeing know, what did it communicate to both the FAA and to airlines, and what did the training manuals say versus what their internal documents said. You know, you're looking for, was there an effort to mislead, or was it a situation where everything was clearly stated and some things were missed? One could be potentially criminal, one is, tragic mistakes.
So if investigators find that there was a problem with the planes that was not adequately fixed, what might that mean for Boeing and its 737 MAX planes?
So we know that the software fix is one of the requirements for getting the planes ungrounded. We don't think that's the only requirement at this point because there are a lot of question marks still around what happened on Ethiopia Airlines 302. So if new lessons come out of that, new problems are found because of that investigation, they're going to have to be addressed before regulators, not only here in the U.S. but around the world, let those 737 MAX jets get back in the air.
Let me ask you about this update. We know a Boeing executive spoke about the software update at an event in London. What's going to be included in it?
We understand it's a host of things. Mm-hmm. One of them will be turning on that indicator light that will now be a standard feature. One of the biggest things this is supposed to address is what many people are calling a single point of failure with the airplane. You had that sensor that malfunctioned. It's called an angle of attack sensor. There are actually two of them. There's one on this side of the plane. It's right about there, and there'll be one on the other side of the plane. It appears in Lion Air, one of them malfunctioned, and that was enough to trigger this anti-stall system. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to people because if there are two of them, there should be some step between where the computer realizes, hey, something's not right here.
Right.
I'm not sure what it is. The
methods.
Pilot should know. We understand that, so that's going to get fixed. We understand that pilots have asked that the force, the amount of pitching down the nose that MCAS, this anti-stall system, can do, is going to be reduced. Same with the repetitive nature. I mean, this thing was going off every 5 to 10 seconds. At a certain point, there may not be a problem, and you're creating a problem with that system. So a lot of the software update, we understand, is centered around fixing issues with that anti-stall system and lessons that have come out of Lion Air, in addition to making this what they call disagree sensor, a light that would let the pilot know, hey, these sensors don't agree, something's going on.
To check it out. So what's the time frame, though, when you talk about this software update? Are we talking about all Boeing 737 MAX planes?
So it certainly sounds like Boeing is more or less finished with preparing this, and we're waiting on the FAA here in the United States to certify it. That could happen as soon as Monday. The way it was explained to me is once it's approved, it will be pushed out to the airlines that have the MAX, that's American, Southwest, and United, and then they'll either take a laptop or a thumb drive, essentially, out to the planes, download the new software, install it, reboot the system, all the things you need to do, and then the airlines will verify it, make sure it's working the way it should. But that's essentially how this gets done.
And that'll be it for the FAA to lift the order to ground the planes?
Probably not until we know more about what happened in the Ethiopian crash. One of the things that's frustrating investigators right now is how little information has come out there.
Yeah.
If it turns out that Ethiopian is more or less a repeat of Lion Air, there may not be a whole lot of additional fixes that are needed. If it's something similar but different, you may see regulators come back and say, well, that's great, you fixed that, but now what about this, this, and this? So the potential is that this grounding lasts for months.
What about simulator training? Because a new report says the pilot of the Ethiopian Airlines flight did not train on a simulator before flying, but Ethiopian Airlines is disputing that. How important is this simulator training, especially when you have a new jet like the 737 MAX was?
Well, pilots believe in simulator training, and there's certainly data to support that it makes flying safer. What's unusual in this one is Ethiopian says that their simulator for the MAX, which they started using in January, a couple of months after the Lion Air crash, couldn't simulate what happened on the Lion Air plane. So it may not matter that captain didn't get simulator time because
those conditions
they
weren't
wouldn't
there.
have been able to drill him on those conditions. Ethiopian does say, though, that they gave all of their pilots training after the Lion Air crash. So that is one of the things that has investigators kind of scratching their heads, if in fact it's a similar circumstance, is if these pilots were just trained on this, why didn't they recognize it? I mean, is it such a hard situation to spot that they can't recognize it? That may then, again, go back to settings or design changes that have to be made in the MAX, and certainly changes to training.
So many open questions. Kris Van Cleave, thank you so much, Kris.
Sure thing.